Hey guys, welcome back to my workbench. It's Dan here as always, and in today's video we're going to be talking about modeling a wood deck on an ExactRail bulkhead flat car. This car that you see here is one that I've been working on, or at least just started working on. It's in the base stages of weathering. I've already done some washes to it and some grime work. The entire underbody is mostly weathered up, as you can see, and this is just primer weathering. Don't mind all the fingerprints under there. There were some fresh oils and I handled that by accident, so that's what happened there. But the thing that I wanted to point out on this car and why I'm choosing this car is a good example of how to do this. The stock ExactRail car comes with this bright, fresh, yellow painted board deck. Now this is wood, and yes, some of these have been retrofitted to like a steel floor. I actually had thought about modeling one of these in this case, but I figured that would be kind of cheating. I wanted to do a wood deck from the ground up, showing you guys how I model one of these, because the techniques themselves are pretty interesting, and there's a number of videos on doing wood weathering and things like that, but nothing like this where it's literally starting from scratch. So I figured I'd give you guys my take on how I approach weathering a wood deck, painting the wood to look like wood, and also weathering it and doing some deterioration to it. So all this will be covered in this short how-to video. So what I'm going to do is I'll get this car set up on my workbench here, get the camera set back up, and we'll go ahead and jump into this. So a real wood deck on a car like this is generally going to either be a dark rotting brown color with a mixture of highlights and white highlights, gray highlights, some reddish highlights. I've seen these where these have been silver wood, where it's all nice and shiny, kind of cleaner wood. It just depends on the prototype you're modeling. This specific car has been refurbished in terms of a paint job, stuff like that. And it's based on a similar prototype car. And for the deck on this, I want it to look more like a grayed out rotting wood deck, where it's not starting to get the full dark rotted colors just yet. It's just kind of a gray wood color. Now that being said, we do need to start off with a base color to actually get this primed, and the first color that I'm going to apply to this is brown. Now why brown? Because this will serve as our primer base, where I'll be able to have all the brown highlights. It'll also fill in some of these little bolt and hinge details, things of that sort. So we'll have a nice brown layer that we can then apply our gray paints over, and that'll give us some more depth, and it'll also allow us to do some paint blending over that brown to add little highlights of weathering in, if that makes sense, where it looks like you can see some brown and some different shadowing kind of going on, or different areas where the wood's a little bit more worn, it's browned out a little bit. There's so much you can do this. You can mix in some blacks here. Of course, we'll talk about maybe mixing in some oils with this, possibly some powders, depending on what we need. We'll go all out with this. I'm going to try to cover as much of my techniques as I can while modeling a moderately weathered deck here. Now the other issue here is that we have a very plain, flat, clean looking board deck. We need to rough this up a little bit. There's a couple ways to achieve this, but one of the most popular ways you can do this is actually by using a razor saw blade like this with the fine teeth. You rough this over these boards individually, and that'll give you some really nice beaten up wood effects. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these out and give these a try, and I'll film the process, of course. I have two different sizes I just picked up from Hobby Lobby tonight. Super cheap. These were $4 a piece, or $5 a piece rather. With tax it's probably closer to $6, but you know, not a big deal, not a huge investment. You don't need to have two of them, but I just wanted to try both to kind of see which works best here, so we'll be learning together on this. So what I'm going to do, and I just already did a couple passes here just to kind of see what this is going to give me. I'm going to take these and I'm going to scrape them across the boards in a couple different directions. I'm going to try to really work on those center boards first. I'm going to try to wear these down. And I'm going to try to let's get a couple different effects here. You can of course also go like this across each individual board. This isn't too terribly tedious. You just take your time with this like everything else. You just try to get some really fine scratches. So I'm just scraping this across the deck. Get all these individual little boards. Scrape it across. We're going along here. Just trying to focus mainly on that center of the deck there. Scraping this across. Okay, pretty satisfied with it. I'll now take a coarse sanding stick, and I'm going to start roughing this across like this. We're going to put some finer grains in here, mix and match a little bit. There we go. Starting to see some pretty decent texture starting to come out here. That's exactly what I want. You can see that did the job very quickly. We now have a nicely roughed up deck. This is pretty much perfect for painting and weathering now. We'll just have to clean up some of this stuff just a little bit. Alright, so I did a primer coat of some earth brown and some black to this deck, and you'll notice that I worked all this paint into all those little nooks and crannies, those little stake pocket, the little tie down points, all that had to get painted, and I used a fine tip brush to kind of go in there and do that. And what I'm going to go do now is I'm just going to add some more layers of acrylic across the deck to just kind of wash over this. And you can see it's kind of annoying because doing this you start taking up some more paint from like what you've already applied, but I don't want to have to go back in and dull coat each individual layer of paint here. The idea is that we just apply paint in various layers, and then whatever peels off is just more weathering, and we're just mixing more colors onto it. So let me just run some more paint over those areas that we pulled off some of the underside or undercoat of paint. I'll just blend this back together a little bit. I want to try to make sure I get all those little bright yellow spots, anything that's not painted, covered. I don't want those showing through. So this is the first layer though, so this is going to get us some pretty nice base effects. This will give us the primer that we need, the primer base coat for the following applications of paint, which will consist of various dilutions of gray and some brown. I'm going to go ahead and start painting in some more washes to fill in all these yellow spots on the deck, these little stake pockets, tie down points. I just want to make sure all this is covered here. So I'm just going to go in and hand paint all these little spots just like this. Just going along and getting that paint in all those little areas. And I'll just keep layering this on here. Once I got all the little spots painted that I need, then I'll be able to just let this actually dry up. Don't forget to hit the sides of the deck too, just in this final clip. So make sure you come in here, paint the edges. All this has to be completely covered with our acrylic paint. Just take your time with this. Try not to get any paint on anywhere else that you don't need to. The next step here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be dry brushing some gray on here, and I'm going to be going just sort of random with this effect. Let me zoom out here a little bit. Apologize if my hand gets in the way. Sometimes it happens with a project like this. But in some areas I'm going to go kind of heavy and blend this out a little bit more, and then in other areas I'll do it so that it's a little bit more blotchy. And this is going to give me that random effect I'm after. The predominant color that I want to have here is the gray. The brown that we've done is obviously just a highlight, but we're going to just kind of keep layering over this until we get the effect that we're happy with, and then we'll actually start layering the weathering on this, if that makes sense. So I'm actually liking that color so far. And just keep scrubbing it into these panels. That white's really making a lot of that texture that we put into these boards really pop out. Here you can see what that's starting to look like. I peeled up a little bit of the paint with a Q-tip. I just scrubbed the deck in certain areas, and then I'll just sort of play around with that color. You know, I'll mix in a little bit of brown, black. On my mixing paper here, I just got a couple different colors kind of going right now, and so, you know, I'll just hit these different boards with different colors. I'll diffuse certain areas, maybe add a little bit more gray, do some highlight things. Just all kinds of cool little effects that you can do with this technique. I mean, you can layer this as much as you want, but I'm just trying to kind of go in and get a real mix of colors on this. But I mean, that corner there in particular, that is just phenomenal. If I can actually zoom in on this. How's that for realistic wood boards, huh? Yeah, look at that. That is looking real good. And that only took us about an hour of paint treatment just to get that far, and we're still not done yet. Also, before I get too far ahead of myself, in case you guys are wondering why I'm not doing the bulkhead wood for the bulkheads themselves, that's because I'm actually going to retrofit metal bulkheads onto this. This is a modification that a lot of these Trenton Works cars got later on in life. It was just a solid metal panel instead of the boards. But if you're going to do the boards, you would of course pretty much weather them the exact same way. You can model some repaired boards, replaced boards, anything you want there. But as long as it's mostly matching this wood, then you have the technique exactly where you need it to be. And again, you can add all kinds of variations. You can really beat those boards up. Also keep in mind on bulkheads, a lot of times you'll see the torn up boards, chipped up boards. So if you're using the stock pieces, you can of course cut sections of the boards out, shred them up a little bit, and really rough up those edges, and then you can do all kinds of crazy little washes and stuff to really bring out those details. I'll go ahead and start doing the next stage of this, which is going to be to apply some oil washes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some thinner up here, and I'm going to use little bits of oil, and I'm going to just streak it across the deck like this, and I'm going to try to kind of work it into these little posts. Everywhere else I can just kind of go like this, and I'm just trying to not so much let it pull out, but I just want to have some of that rust and grime collect into those little pockets, those little tie down ports. And I'm going to just try to work this in, but not too much. I don't want to overwork it for sure. And again, depending on your particular taste, you can add some more oil. You can do some drier rust oil streaking or anything like that according to a prototype, or if it's just, again, what you prefer. But in this particular case, I'm just trying to add it just in selective areas. I'm not trying to overdo it. I might even come back and add little dots of rust into those little holes individually. But you can see very quickly that wash helped to add a little bit more depth, and it also helped to pull in and collect into all those little nooks and crannies, all those little board slices, and all the little cuts and grinding marks that we've left into these boards. The thing about the acrylic paint is that it is a relatively heavy layer of paint, and that doesn't necessarily make everything pop. This is just the color blending. The oil helps to darken all those little raised details and all those little seams and cracks and crevices back down, and it helps them to pop out. So we have a very convincing looking board pattern on this bulkhead now. Alright, so this deck is coming along really nicely. We got all of the wet treatment finished for the most part. Now we're ready to finish this up with some powder work. And the reason I'm going to start using some powders is because these dry highlights will help to bring out some of these cracks and some of these little scrapes and gouges that we've put in these boards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a roughed up Citadel No. 5 brush and some black powder. And I'm just going to start kind of running this across the deck in certain areas, and very quickly, if you pay attention to this, notice how you very quickly start getting some little highlights of color. These powders will start collecting in certain areas. High points, for example, little areas where we've scraped up the plastic. And this will start giving us some neat little effects. It'll also resemble maybe some little scrapes in the wood, little things like that. And again, you can just vary this up. I mean, you can just go across different directions. You can really work it in there if need be. Hell, you can even hand do individual boards with a fine tip brush if you want. You can go in here and take a fine tip brush. You can run some powders across certain areas, darken certain boards down. I'm not going to do this for my model for all of them. I'm just going to do this as a quick demonstration for the sake of demonstration purpose, obviously. But this is just to give you an idea of some other little color variations you can do. I mean, you can go into town on this. You can bring in some brown powder, you can do some rust tone powders, and really just don't be afraid to add some color to this thing. I mean, add a little just here and there. We can add some kind of around those little stake pockets. Stuff like that. Add that powder, clean it off a little bit. Add some here, maybe a little bit over here. Just like that. And I can just run it down like that and just keep building that color variety. And it's amazing how so little powder even still can give you such a great little effect. Just that quick, we've darkened up some of these boards, we've brought out some more of that color detail, we've helped to make things pop a little bit, and now I can even come back in here, I can add a little bit of rust. These little pockets, these little tie down strap points on this Flatcar deck, you can just add a little bit of random rust too. You can use darker, fresher rust, whatever you want, depending on the prototype or the look you're trying to go with. If you have prototype photos, obviously you just want to replicate what you see best you can, but I mean, if you're just freelancing this, you can do whatever you want. Right up here next to where this bulkhead is also going to join in. I apologize, guys, I didn't realize I was off camera there. What I can do, bring a little bit more powder right up against that. Make it look like there's a little bit of rust runoff coming down from those boards. Or in this case, that panel. It's going to be there. And just streak it across. Like I said, you can just add all kinds of little effects. You can add little bits of white, you can dry brush some more gray over this. Whatever you want to do, you can just weather this and beat the ever-loving crap out of this. But these are just some brief techniques discussing how I like to do these boards and how I very convincingly paint plastic to look like wood. I mean, this is just incredible. And this was all done in a day. Of course, don't forget to apply some of these powders to the edge of your deck as well. Being careful not to apply it so much to the sides of the car body. This car here for the car body itself is just mostly oil work. I don't want to over weather this because, again, I'm modeling a car that was repainted a number of years back, so it's just starting to rust back up and get beaten up. Thus the reason it's honestly in pretty decent shape compared to some of these which are trashed. So like I said, don't forget to hit up the sides of your car on this deck, blend some powders in. You can add a little bit of rust if need be, and just go have fun. Do whatever you want. And with that, we've completed this car and we've reached the end of this video. And in detail here, I'll show you guys how things have turned out. We have taken a plain, bright yellow, cartoonish looking plastic deck, and with some painting techniques and some basic hand tools, we've recreated the look of weathered, aged wood. And this is the finished product. Take a look at that. I think it came out really, really good. I really love that wood grain and the way that came out. Absolutely awesome. So again, really this demonstrates the basic techniques you can use to recreate something like this. And this can work on pretty much any bulkhead flat car, or any flat car in general, really. Even wood grain on a structure, and really anywhere else that applies that would have a wood paneling or finish. Think box cars, old school box cars. There's so many different things you can do with these weathering techniques, and obviously this is just the way I do it. There's a lot of other videos on how to do a technique like this, but this is just my take, my variation of this. And again, it was all done very simply, and we now have a very convincing looking wood deck for this retrofitted bulkhead flat car. And also, I've installed the end sheets here, the metal fabricated sheets for this car, used in, I believe this one is used in sheet metal or plate steel service. So it has these really cool bulkhead retrofit ends. And I'll show you guys how to actually do this particular detail for bulkhead flat cars later on, so keep an eye out for another video on a topic like this. As for now, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube for more content coming down the road, and I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.